Hello, good evening, and welcome back to the State of Scottish Football here on Monday. Very happy for everybody to be joining us this evening. I should start off by saying that I'm not alone. I am joined by Colin Byers. Colin, how are you doing?
I'm not too bad for a Monday. How are you?
Oh, my team's let me down at the weekend, but I'm
You're
happy.
digging up early, are you?
I'm happy to chat about them and dissect them a little bit over the next hour. Of course, as usual, we're live across Facebook, LinkedIn. Oh, I'm off to a fantastic start, haven't I? YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. And I should also state that we are doing a monthly prize giveaway on YouTube at the moment. And the prize is 2 tickets to the sold-out evening with Martin Boyle, John Hartson, and Chris Sutton, which is going to be happening on the 29th of October at the Radisson Blu Hotel in Glasgow. And of course, I advise everybody to subscribe, and we'll be announcing the winner later on in this show. I'm going to give a few other updates throughout the show as well to keep getting people involved. So stay tuned for that. But Colin, let's dive straight into it with my fantastic Hibs, who ended Aberdeen's 10-game winning run. I don't know what Dave Cormack, he must possess some kind of powers, but how big was that win for Aberdeen at the weekend? You know, they'd gone 10 games without a win, and finally they came away with 3 points, a big 3 points.
It's a crucial 3 points for them as well, because if you look at the table, Livingston won as well, so they could have well been behind them as well as Johnstone as well. So it was a much needed win for them as well. Maybe the performance wasn't there, but I think the 3 points was much needed for them. And as you said, it's three losses in a row now for Hibs as well.
I know. Thanks for reminding me of that one. But Aberdeen had a really busy transfer window, and it's quite hard to pinpoint, who was exactly the best player. But Christian Ramirez has done fairly well, hasn't he? Another good goal at the weekend. I thought it was a fantastically taken strike. And I think although Aberdeen have been very poor this season, as well as Calvin Ramsey, I should say, but I think Christian Ramirez has been that player who Aberdeen have always been able to rely on. He's always been there.
Yeah. Weirdly, you talk about the players that's coming in. I think it's the two young guys, Mackenzie and Ramsey. It stood out the most, as well as Ramirez. Ramirez is obviously, I think he's one of those players that will strive on good service, and he maybe hasn't been getting that in recent games. I know that's an easy thing to say for a striker. They need the service, but I don't think he's going to be one of those kind of guys who's going to make things happen on his own. He needs the players around about him to make it happen for him. And if he can get fantastic service like he did on Saturday, I'm sure he'll bang in a few more goals.
Of course, you mentioned Calvin Ramsey and Jack McKenzie there. Calvin Ramsey is now, I think, second or joint top on the assist charts at the moment in the Premiership with James Tavernier. He did pick up an injury at the weekend, which hopefully isn't too severe. But how impressed have you been with Calvin Ramsey this season? Because relatively, he was unknown coming into the season, and now people are tipping him for a Scotland call-up. So as poor as Aberdeen have been, he's certainly doing something right.
Yeah, it's saying something when your right back's your top assist getter. But yeah, he's done really well. He's settled into the team fairly quickly as well. I don't think it'd be too much of a surprise for most Aberdeen fans that would have known him coming through the youth, that he's doing so well. As you mentioned, they talk about a Scotland call-up as well. Well, we seem to have an influx of full-backs at both sides of the pitch as well. So if you're a Scotland manager, you're kind of trying to fit them all in. But whether or not he's ready for that step up, I don't know. We talk about Patterson getting into the squad. If he's going to continue on the same vein, then why not?
It's funny, isn't it? We've been desperate for a right back for so many years, and now out of nowhere, Nathan Patterson has emerged, Calvin Ramsey's emerged, and Tony Ralston has come onto a game at Celtic. It's pretty happy times as a Celtic fan at the moment. But was this a significant victory for Stephen Glass? Not in the sense that it's going to turn the season around or anything like that, but just to get a few doubters off his back. Hibs have lost 3 in a row, but they're still a decent side. It's a big win to him for him to get, and I think within the dressing room that should hopefully ease the players a little bit.
I think it's eased the pressure on him slightly. I think had it been another loss, I definitely think that the doubters would have been more vocal. I think what he's done is it's just kind of eased it slightly. I don't think he's actually under any pressure from the chairman. I think he's going to stick with him for the remainder of the season, regardless. But I just think that victory has just eased things slightly for the Aberdeen fans, and I think it's significant as well that the attendance was quite low as well. I think it was only about 8,000 actually at Pittodrie as well, and 1,000 travelling supporters. So maybe disappointing on both sides. Maybe they could have had more. I don't know. You think if Hibs were playing or had going through a better run, you might have expected a better travelling support as well. But yeah, certainly it's a victory. It's eased things slightly for him before he goes into more tricky fixtures.
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, when you look back in the summer, I think it's clear that the board back Stephen Glass and they're believing in what he can do. And I think, a sacking would be a bit premature, especially given how much they have invested. And the signs have been good, but as well, it's been a little bit difficult to get going. But obviously, a big win against Hibs should definitely ease the pressure there. But what it has done is mount a little bit of pressure on the man in our title there, Jack Ross. Hibs were undefeated until coming up against Rangers, and now that's 3 defeats in a row. In 2 of those 3 defeats, they've had a man sent off. It's not really been pleasant viewing, has it, for a Hibernian point?
No, it hasn't. But it's. I think he's maybe. It's because of his early success. I think he's now what's happening is it's sort of catching up with him. If he hadn't gotten off to such a great start and been undefeated for so long, I don't think we would be asking this kind of question. But no, I don't think he's under pressure as such. I just think they're in a bit of a bad run. I'll look at what they've got next. They've got Celtic next at home, then they've got 3 away in the league, which is quite an incredible run that they've got. So yeah, it could be worse before it gets better for if you're a Hibs fan.
Definitely. Strange love the doctor there in the comments saying, I've never doubted Glass. The numbers and performances have been good. The results have been contrary to those, unfortunately, which is definitely interesting because I think, touching on Stephen Glass, I think that would be fair to say some of the football has been good. But we'll stick with Hibs at the moment. Now, one of the issues that has arisen is the defence has been poor. And I don't think there's any hiding away from that. If you put a cross into the box at the moment against Hibs, you've probably got a 50-50 chance of scoring it. There's poor defending again from Paul Hanlon, somebody who you think you have to be assured of. And Darren McGregor, your most senior player, goes and gets sent off. I mean, fair enough, it was a consolation red card, if there can be such a thing so late in the game. It didn't really have a true impact. But is this a concern for Hibs, the fact that they can't seem to nail down a centre-back partnership? There's a few red cards in there. Obviously, Nathan Wood has come from Middlesbrough. A very strange signing, in my opinion. He's made 1 appearance and it was a 3-0 defeat to Dundee United, and instantly he's right back out of the team.
I think if you're gonna build a winning team, especially if you're a team like Hibs, you've got to have a solid back line, and it's got to be a reliable back line as well. At the moment, they obviously don't have that. They're conceding goals. They're getting needless red cards. So discipline perhaps is maybe an issue as well. So if they're going to get out of this, if Jack Ross is going to get through this, what he's got to look at is his back 4 and see who he can actually rely on within that back line and try and build a team around about them. Because I think they've got a decent enough squad. I mean, I think they will be top 6. They've got a squad good enough to do that. But I just think at the moment that they're leaking the goals, which isn't the best thing to do, because if you start leaking goals, then you have to rely on the other end to get the goals. So if you're conceding 1, you've got to then go and score 2. So no, I think he's going to have some issues with his defence to look at.
Strange love the doctor again coming in there saying the squad depth is definitely being tested. It doesn't help that there's a new defender getting sent off every game at the moment. But as you say there, it all starts from the defence. There's the classic line of, an attack will win you a game, but a defence will win you a title. And Hibs are by no means going for the title, but certainly to get those European places that they want, they do need to start well at the back. But at the other end of the pitch, things haven't quite gone as well as they did last season. Martin Boyle is having a terrific season once again, but other than that, Hibs have been lacking. James Scott is coming from Hull City and he's been relatively unknown. Jamie Murphy is quite hot and cold. He doesn't seem to be able to get going in a Hibs shirt. And Kevin Nisbet doesn't seem to be the player he was last year. I think a lot of this is to do with Christian Doidge getting injured. I think that's had a massive part to play in this Hibs attack. But is that a concern as well, the fact that already defensively there's a few issues with Hibs and now the attackers are just not even scoring the goals? So if they do concede, it looks nearly impossible for them to even come back into a match.
You could argue the point the same way with Aberdeen as well. I mean, relying too much on one player to get in the goals. There's not enough goals throughout the team for Aberdeen and Hibs. I think that's a bit of an issue. Midfield needs to start chipping in with the goals. As you said, the Boyle's obviously the main player to get them the goals, but you can't rely on one player for a whole season to get them through, especially in a tricky game like that, where I think it was fairly even for large spells. You're just looking for somebody to take the game by the scruff of the neck and just do something slightly different. When you're on a run like Hibs have been on, they're maybe a little bit kind of tentative to do anything like that. They don't want to be the one that's responsible for giving away a goal or giving away a penalty or free kick that then leads to a goal, because heads will start to drop. So yeah, I think if they're going to get out of this, as I said, defensively they need to be better, but they need to start getting goals from other aspects of the pitch as well.
Definitely, and well, we're talking about how poor the defence is. The team who they've got coming up on Wednesday have the best goal difference in the league, which is Celtic. We'll touch on the Celtic St Johnstone game in just a minute, but keeping with Hibs here, that's 3 defeats in a row so far for Hibs. Even though the game that's coming up is going to be Easter Road, is it looking like 4 in a row for Jack Ross at the moment?
I think it probably will be. I just think Celtic are starting to kind of... I don't think Celtic's at their best. They're getting there, but I just think that Celtic will be too much for them. And again, it's one of those kind of games where you might expect Hibs to lose, but you never know. They could actually just sneak it, and it might just be that might be the catalyst for them again to go on a run. So I wouldn't just write them off too much, but I think a Celtic win would be where the bookies are seeing it.
Definitely. I think from my point of view, I think there does need to be pressure on Jack Ross, but I think there's a lot going on that's out of his control. He's only got X amount of defenders to call upon and up front as well. I think Scott Allen's looked really good this season, even though it looked like he was potentially off at the end of the summer window. So it's definitely going to be an interesting one. Obviously, though, we can't forget the Hibs were undefeated until coming up against Rangers. They made a really good start to the season. Fair enough, they hadn't played the best teams in the league at that point, but I think it'll definitely be a big test for them coming up against Celtic. And, of course, Celtic coming off the back of another impressive victory at the weekend, 2-0 against St Johnstone. Giacomakis, I really hope I haven't butchered the name there, got his first goal. It was quite a fox in the box, a striker's finish. And Juranovic, another summer signing, scoring the penalty. Is this Celtic team starting to look like... Is this Celtic team starting to look like what Ange Postecoglou has been building towards?
I think, as I said, I think that they're getting there. I would say I think it's a poor St Johnstone team as well. They've come up against, maybe St Johnstone of last season might have proved a tougher test. I don't know, but I do think that they are getting there. I think maybe as well defensively. I think if they, and I kind of sort of repeat myself what I'm saying about Hibs, but if they are to kind of get back up to the top end, where they want to be, I think defensively they need to be better. I think what they've got maybe isn't the best, and I don't want to be sort of being negative about any defenders, but I think if they are to improve when they come up against Rangers again later on, that'll be the true test for them. But they're certainly on the right path, and they seem to be getting there, and playing a style that the manager has been looking for.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's what people have said with Postecoglou. Obviously at the beginning things weren't going well, but people were saying, give him time to let his players come in. And I think that's been true. And one of the issues with Celtic has been getting that defence sorted. But I believe that's now 3 clean sheets in a row, scoring multiple goals in those games as well. Is that reassuring now that the defence seems to be settled? Because there's been quite a few errors. You look back to the Hearts game at the start of the season, the Real Betis game, just some comical defending at times. But it seems now that Celtic are starting to get a hold of that. Callum McGregor coming back as well has been instrumental in playing that holding midfield role.
Yeah, it was Celtic were poor last season. I think everybody would admit that they were really poor. They were really off. So there was going to be changes needed through the summer. The board have backed the manager that he's essentially been allowed to bring in the players that he wants, which is not very usual that in these kind of days anniversary everybody sort of cutting back and watching the pennies, but he's been allowed to bring in the players, so he's been back. So I think the Celtic fans recognise as well that they should give him time and just allow him to try and implement the changes that he wants, because as I said, they were really poor last season, and I think there was changes that was needed, and they're starting to reap the benefits of that.
Definitely. And of course, some of the big changes that he's made is to that front line. Of course, we've seen Lila Bada come in and claim that right wing position. Jota's come in and been fantastic as well on the left. And Furuhashi, another one. All 3 of them have looked fantastic, as has now Giacomakis, who's arrived obviously the top goal scorer in the Eredivisie last season in Holland. He's come into the team, and he's got quite a job on his hands to actually get into that starting 11, obviously with the form of Furuhashi. But will that goal have done him some wonders? Because obviously actually coming in, it wasn't necessarily his form. He was just injured. And I remember he picked up a calf strain in training. So it's taken him a while to actually get into this team. But now he's in, he scored a goal. Is this going to be good competition between him and Furuhashi, do you think?
I'm glad you've been practicing all those pronunciations, because I would have had a nightmare trying to get all of them. It's one of those where, he's been injured. He's still not getting in the team, and then now he's back in the team and getting the goals. So yeah, that's a perfect scenario for the manager. He wants his goal scorers to be scoring goals and giving him that headache of, well, who do I start, who do I leave out? Because everybody wants to be in the team and everybody wants to be in a winning team. So that's ideal for him. And for a Celtic point of view, they'll be hoping that he can continue his form.
Definitely. It's a good headache to have for a managerial point of view. Yeah. And do you think now this result, and obviously we'll touch on Rangers later on, but Rangers, of course, winning at the weekend, do you think they're going to start looking over their shoulders at this Celtic team now and thinking, they are a concern? Celtic are really, they look up and going again. Do you think I'm not suggesting that they're going to win the title, but do you think this team can now start realistically hoping and getting back into that title race?
I think if you're a Rangers supporter, I think you would obviously still be looking for them anyway, but I don't think it's just Celtic. I think if you look at the league, I think Dundee United's there. I think Hearts are there as well. I know we're only sort of 10 games in, but Rangers haven't really blown anybody away as such yet. They haven't been on their best as yet. So I think they've still got a gear or two to go up through as well. So yeah, they would always obviously have a concern about their old rivals, but I think the early sort of mocking of, this is a really poor Celtic team is maybe they've maybe quieting down with that a little bit. And I think come the next Celtic Rangers game, I think that'll be the test to see how far Celtic have come.
I'm really looking forward to the next Old Firm, to be honest. I think it'll be a cracker. Scott Howe in the comments there saying 2 or 3-0 to Celtic on Wednesday. And to be honest, on form, I think that would be a very accurate scoreline. It might even be more than that. But we'll touch on Celtic's opponents now at this past weekend. St Johnstone. It's not been a great start to the season at all for the team who I think a lot of neutrals fell in love with last year with Callum Davidson. They lost a lot of players in the January transfer window. And now it's not quite going well, because one thing that we've always associated this team with was they could defend. They may not have that 20 or 30 goal a season striker up front, but they can hold on to a 1-0 lead. Now it just doesn't seem the case. I know losing Kerr is a massive blow, and people like Effie Ambrose have come into that team. It's just not looking great at the moment for St Johnstone, is it?
It's weird that they've won 2 trophies with no fans sitting watching them, but suddenly the fans are back in again and they're struggling. But as I said earlier, I think it was a really poor St Johnstone team that played on Saturday. Not to take anything away from Celtic's winning or anything, but I think they are poor at the moment. Callum obviously did a fantastic job last season, winning the 2 trophies, and deserves. We're talking about Jack Ross being under pressure. I don't think Callum's necessarily under pressure at all. Again, he might be a victim of his own success, but I think they'll get through it. Whether or not they make the top 6, I don't know. I think the teams above them are stronger, and even some of the teams round about them are a little bit stronger as well. He looks at Livingston and Aberdeen, but I think they'll comfortably finish. Maybe mid-table, but it's worrying times for them at the moment.
Coming into the season, nobody expected them to repeat the cup double. I mean, that was just sensational to say the least. But I think a lot of fans watching St Johnstone were hoping that this season they'd push for the European places, push up to the table. Now, do you think it's a question of survival? Do you think? I know we're only 10 games into the season, but do you think the question is now turned as to what St Johnstone's hopes and ambitions are for this season?
Yeah, I think they would have liked to have obviously built on last season. I think the exploits of the European campaign earlier in the season may have just kind of taken its toll on them slightly. I think they would have maybe, because it's such a new thing for them not being in Europe, that might have just been a bit more of a shock than they realised. But I think for a club like St Johnstone, and I'm not being sort of disrespectful or anything, but I think if they can finish mid-table, I think that would be happy. They would be happy with that. I might get slated from a few St Johnstone fans by that, but I think if realistically if they're finishing if they can get into the top 6, I think that would be a bonus for them. But in terms of survival, no, I think, as I said, I think they'll finish comfortably mid-table, but I don't think they should be worrying too much about what's happening below them. But another couple of bad results, you just never know.
It seems almost ridiculous to say that a couple of months ago they were playing Galatasaray in the Europa League. That seems a lifetime ago now. But
Yeah.
do you think that perhaps has had an impact on their season, playing those European games right at the beginning? Not necessarily a confidence blow, but just in general football, something that the fans and the players weren't really used to, a big occasion. And now there's that added pressure on, we've just played Galatasaray. We have to do better in the league. We have to build on what we've done.
Yeah, I think if you're seasoned campaigners in European football, like Aberdeen, Hibs, Celtic, Hearts, and that you've played those early rounds before the season's even started, I think you're better prepared for it. As I said earlier, I don't think I think the euphoria of being in Europe and playing the teams like a Galatasaray, they may have just maybe taken their eye off the ball slightly in terms of the domestic side of things, and that wave that they were riding throughout the summer hasn't sort of carried on into the league campaign. But as I said, I think they'll be fine and they'll finish comfortably mid-table.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I don't think they'll be in any kind of relegation threat, but I think perhaps their expectations have lowered. We'll jump over to the other side of Glasgow in just a minute, but I do want to remind everybody about our subscriber giveaway at the moment. We're giving away 2 tickets to a sold-out evening with Martin O'Neill, John Hartson and Chris Sutton on October 29th at the Radisson Blue Hotel in Glasgow. All you need to do is subscribe to the State of Mind YouTube channel to be entered in the giveaway, and we'll be announcing the winners at the end of the show. So stay tuned for that. But let's get on to Rangers, who... Another poor performance from the champions, but again, they've come away with 3 points. What did you make of Rangers' just general performance at the weekend against St Mirren?
It's one of those victories that they've dug in and they've got the 3 points and they've left St Mirren with the points that they were looking for. Yeah, it might not have been the best, but at the end of the day, it's a 3 points, especially when they went 1-0 down so early as well. I think if that had maybe happened last season, I think they would have gone on it and won it comfortably. My Rangers would have gone on to win it comfortably, but I just think again that is it a case that they've maybe taken their eye off the ball slightly as well. I don't know. Getting Morelos to get back in amongst the goals as well is obviously good for them. Just nobody. There's nobody to sort of. You could say right now, categorically, right, they're going to win the league. I know, as I said, I know it's only 10 games in, but nobody's really blown anybody away. Ordinarily, by this time, you would have had a Celtic or a Rangers might have been, 6 or 7 points in front. It's only 3 points at the gap at the moment. So they've got the victory, but it was a tight one.
It's interesting. I think you're spot on by saying, last season, this is a game that Rangers come back into and they can win it quite convincingly. You're talking a 3 or 4-1 perhaps, but just another 2-1 that they've scraped by. And it's again a case of a few players not performing. Obviously this season, the likes of Ryan Kent just haven't been at it. And James Tavernier, I know he's at the top of the assist charts, but he's not been to the same levels, which I think shows how good a player he is. He's not to the same levels that he's set previously. But one player who he divides opinions constantly is Alfredo Morelos, and he's just scored his 100th goal for Rangers. But Jack Cullen and I were discussing on our show last week. It's very hard to pinpoint what is going on with him at the moment and whether he's actually in form or if he's perhaps going through a bit of a slump. What have you made of Alfredo Morelos recently? Because obviously 2 years ago, before Rangers won the league, it looked as if he was going to be going to Lille. It looked as if he was off, and then he stayed. They won the league. It almost looked like the perfect send-off. This summer, it looked like he was perhaps going to Porto. There were a lot of links there, going abroad into Europe. But once again, he stayed at Rangers, and he's not a striker that's going to get you 40 goals a season. But at the same time, he's very valuable to the club.
It seems like every window that comes up, he's leaving or he's almost leaving. So, for them to still have him, it's vital. Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one. He's now got his 100 goals. I see on the social media, everybody seems to be loving that kind of fact. But as I said a few weeks ago, it was a case of where is he? What's he doing? Is he sticking around? Is he not? So No, it's a great achievement. It's a great milestone for him. I mean, no matter what team you're playing for, to get 100 goals for that club, especially a club like Rangers, it's a fantastic achievement for him.
Definitely. Now, I don't think I'm putting you on the spot when I say this here, and I'm not trying to be too controversial, but do you think with this 100 goals, with obviously winning the league title last year, do you think Morelos not necessarily goes down as a Rangers legend, but do you think he goes down as a bit of a club hero amongst fans?
Oh, yeah, you're not putting me on the spot there. No, I think he's definitely one of those that I don't know. I'm not sure if he's a legend in the terms of like say your McCoys of the world, but I certainly think he's very much loved by a large section of the Rangers supporters. Cult hero maybe would be one way to describe an icon maybe as well. Yeah, but
yeah.
I wouldn't go as far as saying he's Marmite. You either love him or you hate him, but I think sometimes what goes against him is his demeanour, his attitude. Sometimes when things aren't going his way, I know goal scorers just like scoring goals, and when things aren't going well for them or things aren't or the goals aren't coming, he seems to kind of almost take umbrage with that and almost goes into kind of a childlike kind of sulk.
Yeah.
Which obviously doesn't help him, but no, I think he'll be. Let's put it this way: he'll be fondly remembered as and when he leaves.
Yeah, which will probably be rumoured in about the next 2 or 3 transfer windows in a row, only for him to stay and sign a new contract. Just going to remind everyone, there were only 4 subscribers short of 15,500. That's fantastic. And the competition winner will be announced tonight, so we'll be sure to subscribe down below. And of course, 100 goals from Morelos isn't bad at all, but goals have been a bit of an issue with this Rangers team, not necessarily getting them, but just in the sense of having a consistent goal scorer. They seem to come from all over the park. Obviously, Roof and Morelos scored at the weekend, which is what you expect, but quite often the goals are coming from deeper. Obviously, we know that Connor Goldson has a goal in him from a corner. James Tavernier is obviously on penalties and scored some crackers as well. The game against Hearts, it's John Lundstrom. Do you think that's quite a good thing that Rangers have these goals coming from all over the park? Or do you think it's maybe a bit of a concern that there's not really that out-and-out striker at the moment? Obviously, Fashion Sakala has come into the team and a lot of praise coming around him, but he's only scored 1 league goal so far. It's not quite been what many Rangers fans had hoped for.
No, I think I'd be contradicting myself if I from earlier on by saying that it's not a good thing to have the goals spread out and not having one person scoring a goal. So I think for Steven Gerrard, I think he'll be pleased that there are goals throughout the team. They are underperforming, but they are still winning games, and that's possibly a sign of from a form of champions that they can still grind out these kind of victories. But as I said earlier, it's a really weird kind of start to the season. No team is standing out in terms of victories, and there's no player really either standing out in terms of consistent performances. Either the fact that we've got 2 right backs, top assists in the league tells you all you need to know really about where we're at the moment in terms of performances. But I think. If they carry on the way they are, as I said, I still think they've got 2 or 3 years to go through as well, and winning these kind of games like they did at St Mirren is definitely a sign of a champion winning team, and that's where we'll find if Celtic can sort of, if they can come up against, let's say for example they go behind against Hibs on Wednesday, which might not be might be a bit of a shock. But let's say they go behind early to Hibs, it will be a mark of them if they can then come from behind and win that game. And even if they do win it, just say 2-1, and they've ground out that victory, that'll be the test of how far they've come.
I think you're spot on there, because we know with this Rangers team, they can definitely go up 2, 3, 4 gears possibly the way they played last season. And yet even in this first gear, they're still winning games and grinding out results. It may not be the prettiest football on the eye, but they're certainly getting the results. And I think at the end of the day, I think that's what Rangers fans will care about. It's a case of, after that 90th, after the whistle's gone in the 90th minute, you move on, you've got the 3 points, just focus on the next game. But one team who I think will be a little bit annoyed to have come away with nothing from that game with St Mirren, because I felt they've come on a little bit in recent weeks under Jim Goodwin, and obviously to take the lead, a fantastic strike from Ronan. They eventually did fall away, but to only lose by 1 goal, do you think St Mirren can still be proud of that performance? Obviously, it sounds strange to say after a defeat, but obviously they gave a good account of themselves.
Yeah, I think after going ahead so early as well, I think they'll be hugely disappointed that they didn't get anything out of it. If they got in a draw, I think they would have been quite happy. I think they would have taken that before the game had started. But yeah, you kind of look at them and you kind of, we were talking about St Johnstone earlier and where they think they should be. I think for St Mirren, who are currently sitting 7th in the league, I think they'd be really happy with that kind of start. After the first 10 games, I think they'd be quite pleased with that. But yeah, I think they'll probably, they would say that they would probably got what they deserve, but I think behind closed doors, I think they'll be hugely disappointed.
Definitely, but one thing that I've always admired Jim Goodwin. I think he's a good manager. I think he can get the job done there. Obviously, St Mirren are lacking a little bit. I believe Jamie McGrath has picked up an injury after this game. I'm not quite sure the extent of that, but do you think that'll be a big blow? Because quite often people used to say, especially last season, if St Mirren have played well, Jamie McGrath has played well. If Jamie McGrath has had a bad game, St Mirren have probably lost. Do you think that's a case of not necessarily a one-man team, but will that injury have a big impact on them?
Yeah, it's much like the rest of the teams that we've talked about. If you've got that one player that's not on form or missing through injury or suspension or whatever it is, things don't go well. He obviously did really well for them last season, and as you said, when St Mirren were winning, it was mainly because of him. It will be a blow. I'm not sure entirely what the impact of the injury is and how that will affect him going forward. But yeah, if he's out for any length of time, I think that'll be a huge blow for him.
Definitely. And just a final point on St Mirren, I don't think they were ever really considered relegation threats, but do you think they're now proving that they can get to that mid-table point? A lot of people said this would be the season they finally get into the top half. Do you think it's possibly a little bit far gone now, given how good the rest of the competition has been? But do you think they're similar to St Johnstone, I guess you would say? They maybe had higher expectations coming into the season, but perhaps they've now steadied the ship and know that, relegation is not going to happen, but we can't really go too far, but we've got something to build on.
I think if they were going to get into the top 6, I think they would have had maybe 5 or 6 more points than they do currently. I just think that the teams round about them, Hibs, Motherwell, Aberdeen, Livingston, I think they will prove to be stronger as the season goes on. But if St Johnstone can stay clear of that bottom 2 spots, I think that they'll find that to be a good season. Anything higher than that would be a bonus for them. I think for somebody like St Mirren, I think top 6 is just too far out for their reach, I would say.
Definitely. And well, speaking of pre-season predictions, one team who definitely wouldn't have been thinking they're in the position they are now is Heart of Midlothian, who are still undefeated, currently 2nd in the Premiership. Although not the best performance at the weekend against Dundee, I think it has to be said. And another draw at home. We'll get onto the positives of Hearts in a second, but is that a bit of a concern that once again Hearts have failed to win at home? Yeah,
it's 2 massive points dropped, I think, in the end. Instead of being 1 point behind Rangers, and now 3. It's a huge disappointment for them. Whereas I was mentioning earlier on about Rangers managing to ground out a victory from a losing position, Hearts have done the opposite. They've thrown away the 3 points from a winning position and against a Dundee team who isn't really set the heather alight so far this season, and they're fortunate to get the point. But it's a funny one again, because they did so well early on, undefeated, still undefeated as you said, but a lot of draws. If they converted 2 or 3 of those draws into wins, obviously they'd be leading the pack. But it's hugely disappointing for Hearts.
Definitely, and I think, as you say, if they could turn some of these draws into wins, they definitely could be within that title shout. I mean, realistically, they are in the title contention at the moment, but it just seems there's a few signs within that team that make you think later on in the season they'll come too short in certain aspects. And I think one of the big blows coming up is Liam Boyce's injury. I think the Hearts team has fantastic depth, the defence, the midfield, even in goals. I think they've got a lot of quality there. But the one area I think they've lacked is up front. And I know Liam Boyce is the top goal scorer in the Premiership, but looking past him, I just don't think the options are there. How big of a loss do you think this is going to be? Because it's typical, a fan might say, that, the one area they couldn't afford to get an injury at, they've gone and done it, really.
Yeah, I think that they're going to struggle for goals going forward. But you never know. It might just be a case so that the one man then just steps up to the plate and starts firing in the goals. I don't know where the goals are going to come from exactly, but they've done well to get themselves into that position. I do think that they will last the season up there. I'm not saying that they're going to challenge throughout the course of the season, but I do think that they'll cement second or third for them by the end of the season. But yeah, the injury to Boyce is obviously going to be huge. They just need that one man to step up and start banging in the goals.
And definitely, and they've got a tricky test coming up, of course, to Perth. I don't think they've won in Perth for something like seven or 8 years. It's quite a ridiculous stat like that. Do you think that's weighing in on these players' doubts now? The fact that once again they've come away with a draw, back to back. Fair enough, one against Rangers is a pretty terrific draw, to be honest. But do you think they'll maybe be a wee bit worried that they may go in a bit of a slump? Because as well, we have to remember Robbie Nielsen was in the stands for the entirety of this game, still serving his ban.
Sitting in his fish tank
it's a brilliant photo, isn't it?
When we saw the pictures, it's funny once you start getting on a run against a team, especially when you're playing away from home, that sort of starts getting into you haven't won in so many games, you haven't won here in so many years. It does start to play in the players' minds, and then once you get that one victory, it's suddenly then it sort of opens up the floodgates slightly. But I think if you're a Hearts supporter and I'm a Hearts supporter, I think this is probably the right time to play St Johnstone. I think they've, as we said earlier, I think it's they're poor at the moment, they're struggling. So I think if they're getting back onto winning ways, I think it might be the ideal opportunity to play St Johnstone.
Definitely could be the perfect time to break that duct as well. I just love hearing those stats when certain teams haven't won either away or at a certain ground in 10, 7 years, however long it is. I always find those ones ridiculous. And you just think, how on earth have they gone that long? And the longer they go, the more ridiculous the stat gets. So that's definitely one to keep an eye on. But we'll swap over to Dundee now. And if you pardon the pun, was this always coming, this goal, do you think? Because Hearts were failing to take that opportunity. John Souttar scored a screamer, really, to say the least. But then Hearts hit the post with Gary Mackay-Steven, I believe. Liam Boyce hit the bar with a header. They just weren't taking their chances. And then in the 83rd minute from a corner, Jason Cummings once again scores a goal at Tynecastle.
Yeah, and that could be vital for Dundee in terms of the season where they finish. Something like Jason Cummings just popping up with a goal where they maybe weren't looking likely that they're going to score. We were saying about Hearts maybe lacking a goal scorer once Boyce is out. I'm not saying obviously Jason Cummings would go to Hearts, but that's the kind of player that they'd be looking for. Somebody who's just going to get them that one goal. Maybe not play terrific for 85 minutes, but he'll be there at the right place at the right time just to tap in a goal that would probably win them a game. But it's good for Cummins again to get another goal at Tynecastle, which he probably loves to do.
Oh, I think he does love it. I think he came to the Hearts Academy, and I don't know the exact history of his relationship with Hearts, but that would definitely be a funny one if they are needing a striker to go for Jason Cummings. I think that would be great. You just need to go to Celtic as well and just cover every single team in Scotland by that point. But one thing my favourite part of this goal was actually James McPake celebrating on the touchline. I love seeing a manager celebrate a goal. No matter whose team it is, I always just find it great. And I think you can just see the emotion coming out of him. He was absolutely buzzing. Obviously, he's a former Hibs player as well, so there's maybe an element of that to it. But do you think this was a significant point for him just to take a bit of the pressure off? Obviously, Dundee, a lot of people have tipped them for relegation. They've not started well, but to come away with that result, and what I think it showed was just that grit and determination. 83rd minute equaliser. It just shows that the players are still there behind them, and just how significant it was for McPake specifically.
Yeah, a 4-point gap between them and Ross County is obviously much more significant than a 3. I know it's only 1 point, but in terms of Ross County, they know they have to win at least 2 games to go above them. And even if you're looking at up the table as well, they're only 3 points behind Livingston and 4 behind Aberdeen as well. So they're still still keeping in touch with them, maybe just. But yeah, it's a huge victory for McPate, and a draw that they got, and I think they'll look to kind of bounce on as well, because I think they'll notice that the teams round about them weren't winning, and to gain 1 point on them is hugely significant.
I think so, definitely. I mean, to be honest, it probably did feel like a victory, that kind of equaliser away against Tynecastle, one of the best teams in the league so far. So it's definitely something that Dundee can look to bounce on. And obviously, we'll touch on Ross County later, but they've got them coming up. Is that a 6-pointer that perhaps if they can win, they can really put some distance between themselves and the Dingwall side?
Yeah, as I said, I mean, it's 4 points at the moment. If they get a win there, that's 7. It's obviously nobody's going to get relegated this early in the competition, but as I said, it's more laying a marker and to try and get away from them at this early stage can only be good for Dundee, and not only, as I said, to getting away from Ross County, but it's keeping in touch with the teams above them as well. 3 points. Depending on how the results go, they could be above Livingston, they could be above St Johnstone as well. So, it's going from 11th, they could be up to 8th or 9th. You just never know. I mean, it's just such a strange league so far. As I said, nobody's sort of putting through any consistent performances. You just never know.
Definitely, that's what we love about the cinch. And one of the best things about it this season is that Dundee United are currently sitting in 3rd after all the talk at the start about Tam Courts not being good enough. Dundee are now 3rd place in the league. They won the Dundee Derby. They came back from a goal down against Celtic to draw there. They beat Hibs 3-0. They stopped Rangers' unbeaten run with a 1-0 victory. And another game against Motherwell at the weekend that they've come away with 3 points. Just how good are Dundee United at the moment, and specifically Tam Courts?
Yeah, I don't want to rub it in for you, but they're the opposite of what Hibs are. They've won 3 in a row, whereas you guys have lost 3 in a row. Sorry, that's the last take. Sorry.
They beat Hibs 3-0 as well. There's plenty of threes involved in this one.
They've done well. I think Coates' appointment maybe wasn't the most glamorous or dare I say the sexiest of appointments that they could have had, but he's been given a little bit of time. He's been allowed to bring in his own philosophies and change things. As I said, they've now won 3 in a row. The 20 points, the same as Hearts. They've beaten Rangers, as you said, drawn with Celtic. But I think from my perspective, significantly, they've lost the Hearts. They've lost the Aberdeen. So it's the teams almost at their kind of level that they've lost to. Now, I know that was earlier on in the season, and it'll be interesting to see what happens when they come up against them next. They've got Livingston and they've got St Johnstone in the next 2, and then significantly they've got Hearts and Aberdeen after that. So, they've certainly slowly and I think quietly climbed up the table, unnoticed maybe to most, but I think like some Rangers and Hearts and Celtic will have noticed that they've just got themselves a little bit of a run. And as I said, once you get yourself on a little bit of a run, you can get yourself up the table.
And of course, coming into this season, obviously they sold Lawrence Shankland, and there was going to be concerns about where the goals would come from a United point of view. But what I found so significant is the fact that they're holding on to these victories. You look at the most significant ones. The victory over Rangers, they kept a clean sheet. In the Dundee Derby, they kept a clean sheet. In the dismantling of Hibs, they kept a clean sheet. How good has their defence been so far this season? Because we knew coming into it that Benjamin Siegrist is one of the best keepers in the league, no doubt. He had a bit of an injury issue earlier on, but he's come back to full form. Charlie Mulgrew, of course, we'll touch on him in just a moment. He's come back into the team as well. And overall, they just seem like a solid defensive unit.
Yeah, what we're saying in terms of Hearts, not holding on to winning positions. Dundee United obviously get themselves into those kind of positions and can hold on and get the victories. And even after conceding a penalty, they've managed to get a late victory against Motherwell. So yeah, I mean I think when everybody seems to be galvanised and playing together and willing to fight for the cause for that 90 minutes, you will see results like that. And I'm not saying any shape or form that Hearts players aren't, but I just think that there's Coates has got them galvanised. He's got them playing well. And a result like that on Saturday doesn't surprise me at all, and it wouldn't be surprised me again, if they go on and win their next two as well.
Now, specifically in this defence, I'm going to touch on Charlie Mulgrew, because coming into the season, I thought he would be a good signing for that experience, leadership. He's got a great set piece on him. I thought he'd be one of those smart signings, but I think he's gone above just about everybody's expectations, to the point now where, almost ridiculously, we're talking about him getting a call-up back into the national team. And I think there's valuable reason for him to actually get this call-up, because he's been fantastic. I'm trying to come up with the best adjective there, but I think I'll go with fantastic. He might be 35 now, but at the same time, if you're offered Scott McKenna or Charlie Mulgrew in the Scotland defence, I think a lot of people are now leaning towards Charlie Mulgrew. I think he's proved a lot of people wrong. Do you think there is a way in this future that Charlie Mulgrew is back in the Scotland setup? Even just as a bench warmer, perhaps.
Yeah, I might just have to burst our bubble there. Slightly. I think in the past we've talked about how good the Scotland squad has been, and the players that we've got at our disposal in terms of in the defence and that sort of 3 or 5, whatever you want to call it, that the manager plays. I think if you're going to try and if you're going to bring him in simply because he's playing well, I think he needs to be playing consistently well for a large period of time. You never know. He might bring that extra experience, but I think if we're going to start bringing people in at 35 or 36 just because they've scored a winner against Motherwell is a slight smack of desperation. But no, he's played well. Listen, he's done really well so far this season. It's whether or not he and Dundee United can carry on that for the rest of the season. But in terms of Scotland call-up, no, I think that's slightly way off.
Yeah, I think the days of Mulgrew and Berra at the back for Scotland have to be over, to be perfectly honest. I'll not be happy there. But, we had this discussion a few weeks ago talking about Mulgrew, and the more these weeks go on, the more I'm sort of leaning towards, he could maybe make the squad, and now I'm thinking he could maybe make the bench, and I'm a little bit worried that by December I'm going to be coming up with a full paragraph on why he should be starting over Grant Hanley, but I'm sure we won't get quite to that point.
If you're sorry to jump in, but if you're the Scotland manager and you're selecting a squad, you surely would be picking a squad where you think, right, okay, I've got, I'm going to play a back three, right? Each of those three plus maybe the 2 or 3 that's on the bench have to be as good as each other. I don't think we should be just selecting Mulgrew just to say, right, you're going to be on the bench, because I think that's just a waste. Through it's maybe the romantic thing to have him back into the squad and things like that. But I think if you're selecting a squad specifically at the national level, I think it has to be one where you think, right, okay, if he's not playing well, then I've got him. But I know that if he does then play well, then he has to then step up. But if we're going to just bring in bench warmers, then I don't think that's a good idea. Bench warmers maybe for a club level, yeah, maybe, but no. No, I'd have to kind of poo-poo that idea slightly.
I suppose it would be a bit of an insult to the likes of Liam Lindsay and Stephen Welsh, who are desperately trying to get into the squad, and then out of nowhere Charlie Mulgrew comes back into it, and it sort of says, what hope do these youngsters have of ever cracking in if we're recalling the 35, 36-year-olds into the team? But on the flip side of the coin in this game was Motherwell. They started the season really well, but a few patchy results now. Do you think there's any cause for concern, or do you think these have just been almost expected losses, if you will? Obviously Celtic and now Dundee United.
I think if you look at the start of the season, before the season started, I should say, and you look at Motherwell, you think, well, are they top 6? Are they bottom 6? I think they were one of those that would be either or. I think obviously they're sitting 6 at the moment. I don't think that they're going to last that last the season in the top six. I think they're just going to fall away slightly and finish in that sort of 7th or 8th position. But again, it's a weird one because, as we see sort of Hearts and Hibs, Dundee United and all that sort of improve and get better, I think, Motherwell maybe have been a little bit static in recent years. And they seem to kind of go through spells where they do well, finish top half, and then the next 2 or 3 years they slide down away. Then it's almost sort of yo-yo up and down within that top 12. But no, I don't think there's any causes for concern if you're a Motherwell supporter at the moment.
Definitely. And just on that, how good of a job do you think Graham Alexander has done? Because not in the same way as Tam Courts, but coming into the job, obviously, his recent history with Salford, I think there are a few question marks raised. Obviously, as well, Stephen Robinson had done such a good job with Motherwell previously. There was a lot to live up to. But what do you make of the job that Graham Alexander has done so far?
Yeah, I think he's done okay. I mean, it's not, as I said, it's not kind of setting the world on fire with the performances. I don't think he was ever going to do that, but he's kind of steadied the ship slightly. He's done a reasonably okay job. If he keeps Motherwell within that sort of top 6, I think that they'll see that as a decent season, a good season for them. But as I said, I don't think they're going to be any danger of slipping any further down.
Definitely. Well, we'll touch on the final result of the weekend, but first we do have the winner of the subscriber giveaway, and I can announce that it is Royson Lynch. Congratulations to Royson Lynch, has won that. Just to once again go over what the prize was, it was a 2 tickets to the sold out evening with Martin O'Neill, John Hartson, and Chris Sutton on October 29th at the Radisson Blu Hotel in Glasgow. So a big congratulations to Royson Lynch for winning that one. And congratulations are also in order for Livingston, who pulled off a cracker of a result, to be honest, a 3-2 against Ross County. I'm just going to be quite simple with this answer or question here. How special was this win for Livingston?
That was a nice segue, by the way. Well done.
Thank
on that. Yeah, it was. We talk about the wins for Aberdeen. I think this one is obviously hugely significant as well. It just keeps them away from the bottom 2. A result maybe that it maybe wouldn't have happened had Ross County not missed that penalty at 1-0. You just never know how it will obviously go on. They were being 2-0 up early doors, but it was a great victory for them. They've to win it 3-2 as well. Plenty of goals, which is maybe something that we wouldn't have seen coming. But a big win for them, but a huge blow for Ross County.
Definitely. And as you say, it's not something we've seen coming because Livingston have really struggled to score this season. I mean, obviously the big win coming against Celtic, they won 1-0. But other than that, they've really struggled to put the ball in the back of the net. And out of nowhere, they've managed to put 3 away. And I think that's a really big step. A few weeks ago, Martindale said that this isn't a bounce back fixture. This isn't where we suddenly turn our fortunes around. But Livingston have slowly but surely gotten better. And as you say, obviously, they've beaten Ross County, who are at the bottom of the table, still haven't gotten a victory yet. That was a massive 6-point victory, I think you'd have to say, for Livingston. And they certainly were worthy of it.
Oh, yeah. It's these fine margins, as I said. If Ross County would get the penalty and score it and go 2-0 up, that's, you almost think the game's almost dead and buried, even at that early stage. But they've done well. They've got back. Anderson finding the net again as well. I think if they are to get going this season, I should say, I think Anderson might be a pivotal player for them. I know there's a lot of he's still fairly young, but I don't think he was given too much of an opportunity at his old club Aberdeen. But I think he's got a point to prove, and I think he'll do a job, and he'll get. I'm not saying he's going to get 20-25 goals a season, but I think what he'll do is he'll be the one that they'll get the goals, the vital goals for Livingston at the right times, and for them to get 3 points away from home is hugely significant. I don't think they would get many points away from home. I think most of their points will come from home. So for them to go away up to Dingwall and get 3 points is a massive result for them.
Of course, as well as a away victory for Livingston, I should have stated that early. It just makes it all the more impressive. But how much credit does David Martindale deserve, do you think, for this recent run of form?
it's weird because if a team's struggling and they're getting bad results, like we said, Jack Ross is how it's under pressure, and then when the team's playing well, we talk about how well the manager's doing. So it's a weird thing. Yeah, obviously he's the guy who picks the team. He works with them all week. Yeah, he's done well. I think for a club like Livingston, I think there are. I think the structures there for them to do well. The stadium's there. I just think they're lacking something to go to that next stage, which is obviously a consistent top 16. I think they're a long way from that, but Martindale's done well, much like Alexander did it has done it at Motherwell.
Ian McIntosh in the comments there saying he's never liked Livy, but it's hard not to like David Martindale, and I think I agree with that. I think David Martindale is a really likable character. Although another comment we've just come in, and I think this is the best way to ask you this one here. What about Ross County? Oofed. This is another game where Ross County have been involved in a thriller, multiple goals, but once again they're on the losing side of it. Is this a concern that they just can't seem to get a victory? They can't even get a draw, actually, I should say, in these sort of fixtures.
It's been a steady decline, not just this season, but off the back of last season as well for Ross County. I think if you are a County fan, I think you would be worried. I think you quite rightly should be worried. They're a long way off from looking like a winning team for whatever reason. I don't know how. The co-managers obviously didn't last very long when they get promoted. Strange situation where one left and one went up the stairs to another job, kind of thing. So it's just if you are a County fan, I would be hugely worried, and I'd be even more concerned if they went down and Inverness went up the other way as well, because that would be a tough one for them to take.
It definitely will be, as you say there. But with this Ross County team, they're the only team now in the Premiership who have still to get a win this season. And it's never easy to identify one team as a guaranteed relegation candidate. But at the moment, they're certainly doing a good job of putting themselves in that running. But up next, they've got Dundee, who have just come off the back of a really good result against Hearts. Now, I know we talk about relegation 6-pointers, but with Livingston getting a good result, Aberdeen, that was a bit tongue-in-cheek there as well, getting a good result. Do you think this is almost more than a 6-pointer between Dundee and Ross County? Because, as you say, there's 4 points in it at the moment. If that goes up to 7, that already at this early stage might just be too much. I mean, Ross County don't even look like they're capable of getting a win.
No, as I said, I think this is a huge game for County. If they lose it, as I said, they're not going to get relegated this early. But it's a huge gap, 7 points. Even Dundee would go above St Johnstone depending how the other results go, obviously as well. But 6 points to St Johnstone or 7 points to Dundee. It's a huge ask for them to get out, especially when they can't buy a victory. You're looking for something for them to hold on to, something, some sort of positive that they can say, well, okay, we'll be fine because of this. But there doesn't seem to be anything that's fairly positive coming out of Dingwall at the moment, and I'd be very fearful of them going forward.
Definitely, it seems the best thing that County have done this season is getting a draw against Hearts. That seems to be currently the highlight, which is pretty sad affairs, to be honest, from the Ross County point of view. But I think that's all we've got time for today, I'm afraid. But we will be back again tomorrow at 6 o'clock. We'll be previewing the midweek fixtures. Obviously, we've just spoken about a relegation 6-pointer there. We've also got Celtic and Hibs. Got some crackers in the midweek, actually. So be sure to come back again tomorrow at 6 p.m. We'll be there to discuss it. Colin, I'd like to thank you for joining me here tonight. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a really good chat. The hour's gone by pretty quick.
It's been a quick hour. It always goes by quick with me because people are desperate to get away. But and finally,
I was going to say maybe it lasted a little bit longer for you for all the Hibs jibes.
Oh, the Hibs jibes are plenty. I make them myself, to be honest. It's the best way to get over a defeat. But just again, congratulations to Royce and Lynch as well for winning the giveaway. A fantastic achievement there. But I've been Stuart Garvey. This has been the State of Scottish Football, and we'll see you again next time.